Hey folks, Yogesh has joined.
Hey Yogesh.
Hello. I see some new folks. I was not here last time, so maybe it's their second time. But I see some new folks. Welcome, John and Harshit.
Thank you.
So, and also welcoming Raj. Have you guys already introduced yourselves? Or this is your first time here?
Hey, yeah, I couldn't introduce myself last time, but I'm Raj, newly joined Anil's team, and yeah, look forward to contributing here.
Awesome. Welcome, Raj.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon all.
Hey, Rama.
Hi.
Harshit and John, I don't know if you introduced yourselves last time or not. I was not here, so another opportunity if you want to.
Yeah, this is John. This is my first time here, just listening in, see what's going on.
So I'm curious, you're with Arista Networks, right?
Yes?
So what brought you to hardware fault management? Anything particular?
I am new to the company, so I am getting involved with everything that I see that pops up that may be related to my future requirement. So I'm really just listening here.
Wonderful. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
And thanks for that intro. Harshit, I'm not sure if you introduced yourselves already or.
Yeah, Yogesh, I did. My name is Harshit. I work in Meta. I recently joined the team close to Anil. I was in Microsoft earlier, so I used to listen in, just try to gather information as much as I can.
Awesome. Welcome, and Anil, looks like you got the whole army. Thank you so much, and welcome everyone. Good, strong presence from Meta. Good to see that.
Likewise from Microsoft also, right?
Yeah.
I think now we will say any meeting, Anil says yes now. Otherwise, we are like 4 people.
Yeah. Very well. Okay. So since I wasn't here, Drew and Rama and Anil and others were over here. Please let's collect the opens, and then after that you pick a good starting point where you left off last time.
Let's work through that. I was saying we're going through the CPAP.
Very poor audio, Drew. Something is wrong with your audio, or it's me.
Oh, okay, 1 second, I'll fix it.
While Drew is fixing his audio, any opens from anyone today?
I think you're asking what the team discussed last week is about that CPAL. Lot of passionate discussion about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the notes and all, but I mean the recording stuff. But I just was saying, let's collect the opens, and then you guys are in best position to pick a starting point for today. I don't hear any opens, so again, welcome everyone, including Tanya, Emmer, and Antonio, our returning friends from different companies, different parts of the world now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Small world. Can you hear me any better now?
Oh,
Yes.
Antonio is here. Good.
Yeah, Antonio's here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be. Hey, Antonio,
Is it Intel or some other company?
I still use your mug, Antonio.
Not with Intel anymore.
Oh.
Some other company. I work for Huawei now.
Oh, okay.
Hi guys, I'm with Huawei. I work out of Ireland now.
Ireland?
Yeah.
Ireland,
Wow.
yes, in Europe. It's just pretty late for Europe this meeting, but it's okay.
Gosh.
It's good to be back.
Good. Oh, you
Yeah,
moved
good to have
from.
you back, Antonio.
Yeah. You moved from Okay, you removed
Well,
the continent.
I think about you every time I use the mug. I'm like, I sure wish Antonio was around. So good to have you back.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
So, so should we pick up where we left off? I went through the comments. I think we're pretty clean down to, about right here, and so there's a lot of discussion uh, about our CPERs and CPADs separate. So I kind of put a picture in to explain the difference between them. Also, though, there were some suggestions on the content. And one of the things that I had people mention to me, I thought I put it in here. 1 second while I just double check. See, I didn't misplace it. Okay, I thought I had added this and I don't see it. Sorry for the scrolling. There may be a certainty. Like how certain are we of this action based on the analysis tool, and there may be a urgency. And that's kind of like, is a crash imminent? If I can spell it right. I can't. And so we may, I'm just putting these as thoughts. We can think about whether that's possible or not. But there may be cases where we go, like for instance, if I were to see, just as an example, errors scattered across every bank on a particular rank, um, I'd think something serious is wrong with that chip. Like there's a rank signal integrity problem, and the odds of that intersecting with another error kind of go up. You're a lot more likely to have a problem with the soft error and one of the other DRAMs affecting the DQs that are putting out errors that are scattered across the banks. So I think there may be some opportunity to optimize here, and that may drive our behavior as a end user. Um, and that was from an internal review. Folks suggested that. The other thing that came up, and so Bijan suggested some standard terminology, and I think that's totally appropriate. I didn't do anything with it here because this is just a proposal for CPADs, but I'd like to propose that we just make sure that our requirement stock, and we've got a new version of it that we're working on with Anil for out of band that we need to get back to. And so I think what I would like to propose here is that we do that consistency exercise for that document, and then just make sure all our other documents align with it.
Yeah, I think it's everyone, yeah, I read through and I think that they make sense, and generally we have discussed this before and seems aligned. Maybe we should also add these to our glossary of terms in the requirements doc.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah. And by the way, I just pasted the link into the chat if you don't have access to the document. So I'll put a comment. I'm going to just reply and say, this is a good idea. Oh, I typed it. And then that's because that's kind of the general guiding document, right? That we're building off of in other places. So I think if we do it there and then we're just consistent, that'll work. Okay. The other thing that Bijan mentioned, because I just had others, and I wasn't sure if there were others, is he mentioned timestamps. And I thought about that for a little bit, and that's kind of interesting. The problem is you don't always have a uniform version of, like if you have a bare metal machine, who knows how the customer might have set the clock on that host. They may have some weird convention that they follow that doesn't match what the CSP follows. But it still may be interesting, and so you just have to take them with a grain of salt if they're wildly different. But like if let's say they are set consistently, you could log the CPER timestamp of the last error that was analyzed, like the error that triggered the CPAD. Or you could also do it for a timestamp of when the analyzer ran, or you could do both. So I don't know. I'll put timestamps here in question mark, and we can think about it. It's not particularly contentious with me, though. It just requires some thought. So is that contentious with anyone?
Yeah, how would you use it? This is for CPAD, right? Like going back to the endpoint, right? And what would that timestamp mean? Is it the one that's coming from the CPER, like the time of the error which caused this action? Or, I mean, I don't
Well, I
really
wasn't sure.
see how it
I had
could be
both.
used.
Yeah, I
Actually,
had both.
besides, Shubda, what you said initially made a lot of sense. Besides, where is the time originated? What's the reference point for timestamps? I think the utility of that timestamp itself, that I think you asked first, like how would it be used, right? I'm also not sure about what is the purpose of this timestamp.
Unless there is like a common reference point, right? Like if we had something that the analyzer started like as a reference
Well,
point, and then from that
yeah.
on,
I
maybe
mean,
that can help.
like I can give you an example where it might be interesting. I mean, imagine you're in a fleet where the timestamps are set consistently. Let's say that we get to my dream world, the RAS API is working, and the BMC timestamps it, and we've made sure all our BMCs are in the ballpark. They're set about to the same time. Then it comes through the pipeline. And what I recommend you do, by the way, if you build an error collection pipeline, is you put timestamps in at each step along the pipeline in your records so that you can tell where the bottlenecks are and where things are getting stuck. And in this case, what I would do is say, hey, what's the difference between the CPER and analysis timestamp? Just as an end user, and go, wow, those two are too far apart. That was 1 hour. Something's wrong. Or if I say, it's 10 seconds, I'm gonna be like, good job, that's awesome. So I don't know that we would use it in analysis. I think it would just be kind of handy for tracking.
So from a hardware perspective, the hardware receiving the CPAD, there's really no practical use for it.
That's right.
It's almost like user data, and you can use it to correlate in the way you just described. So from a hardware perspective, I feel like do whatever's good for you.
But I think, again, remember, all of these fields will have like validation bits, right? Just as part of the normal, creating of a data structure. So anyone who creates a CPAD is free to set the validation bit of the timestamp to 0 and not fill in a timestamp, right? But it clearly could be useful. Like as an example, if someone sends me a spreadsheet full of CPRs and CPADs, and I look at a CPAD and say, oh, that was generated 6 months ago. I know that I've updated the tool since then. Okay, right?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. We may want to put there is a version number, but we may want to,
whatever.
Right? We may want to put an analyzer version in as well. Like
it's a good idea. We should be cautious about assuming a CPAD always comes from an analyzer, but I agree some sort of creator ID might be interesting.
Okay.
No, but the analyzer is going to interpret what the version number of the CPAD, right? Like, do we need the analyzer version? It just needs to be compliant with CPERS and CPAD versions that are.
It would be helpful. I mean, I actually think about it just like a fru ID, right? A CPER has a fru ID and it says which component is bad, right? If I'm looking at a bunch of CPADs just like in isolation, right? And I can tell where what it came from, that would be helpful, right?
Well, and I'll give you an example is that if I'm hoping that when we get this really rolling, you all improve your analyzers. And so I might say, gosh, I had a sudden spike in, a particular action. And then I go, wait, I see an analyzer version change, and that might indicate that, well, you fixed something and you got better at predicting RAS actions.
Yep.
Or it might be the other way around, that we got a
Yeah.
bunch of actions we don't want and we found a bug in the analyzer. And if
Yeah,
we give
but
those to you, you'll know why we concluded that.
I mean,
So-
just
so
the same way
which
a CPER
analyzer?
allows a CPER contains unique information about what component generated it. So I think the CPAD should contain unique information about what component generated it, right? Like I just kind of basic, principle, right?
So which analyzer? Multiple analyzers in the play, right? So which analyzer?
Whichever
Whichever one. It's like vendor specific information, Yogesh, right? It's just like AMD delivers an analyzer and we put in a version number, and then as we change the analyzer, we keep incrementing that version number effectively. Intel does the same thing, right? But those don't. There's no intersection between those, right? Like I'm never
So
looking at it.
actually, in FMFM scenario, Drew, if you remember the diagram, FMFM scenario, we did have vendor specific and then multiple vendor analyzers in the play, right?
But Yogesh, also the other thing I strongly encourage you not to do is give us an Intel analyzer and then say, hey, go ask SK Hynix and Samsung and Micron for theirs so that you can integrate them, right? So what we would do is we'd get regular drops from you incorporating whatever analyzer you have. But that's something then, like when I do code, you check the code in and you know the kind of the ID of the top tree that you built it at. And so that's what you do. You check the code in, you have kind of like an ID for, the label. You label your releases. And so then if you see something and you're going, what the heck was that going on? You can go back in your code base and see which version of the code generated that result. And if you fixed it since, you can go to your customer and go, yeah, we know that it did that. That doesn't look quite right, but we fixed it. And we can show you that because we know that we fixed our code after that release. So tying it to a code release is awesome, right? That's just like best practice. That's why we put firmware versions in CPER logs, so that you can go, oh yeah, we know that firmware was screwing up back in the dark ages, but we fixed it, and so now the CPERs are good. Same thing with the analyzer.
I agree. It will help in most cases. Some cases may be tricky, but yeah, it will help.
I don't think it hurts, and I think
exactly.
it allows you to tie it to your code and which version of your code we were using at the time. That'll help you debug your code if we see something funky.
True. Okay.
So I like it. Thank you, Vilas. I like the way you suggested that. Okay, that's cool. Okay. And then we're talking about GUIDs, so we don't want to send the GUIDs back. Like, I'm sure of that. And one of the confusions last week was, well, what's the difference between a CPAD and a CPER? So I tried to make it simple. Oh, and I want to scroll back up before we go there. I think that one thing I was wondering about is that CPADs are really something that allow software to look at the output of the analyzer programmatically. That's really what they're about, right? And it's a fleet policy, it's repair automation, and it's the RAS endpoint might all look at a CPAD, and because it's got a known format, it's easy to write software to process them in an automated way, which is what we want, right? We want to decide whether we believe it, we want to decide whether to schedule a repair, and we want to decide whether or not to drive some RAS action. So hopefully that clears the confusion up last week. Does it? I mean, are people clear on why CPADs and CPERs should be different?
No, I thought last week we got into a little bit of a circular discussion, and it was mainly around misunderstanding what. Yeah, I mean, I think you've addressed it, but I think mainly around misunderstanding the CPAD's role and the chain, and I think you're very clear now. So I think in my view, we should be okay, but I don't speak for everybody.
I think
Drew, and I don't know if you had a chance to sync with Anil offline on that. There were some discussions. Anil, if you want to chime in on that from last week.
Yeah, Drew and I talked. Unfortunately, we couldn't, we spent so much time in so many different topics that we couldn't converge on that. But I think let's move ahead with this thought process. My concern is that when it comes to actually implementation, I'm still not clear whether we will have two different data structures or it's going to be only one data structure. But that's, I think, implementation kind of concept. So,
well, yeah, maybe when we go, I agree, Anil. Like what we could do is say, here's the content of what we want out of it,
yeah,
and it could be that a CPAD is it's the same format as a CPER, but we call it a different name because it came from an analyzer, and we do need to be able. I noticed the spelling error here. We do need to be able to distinguish the inputs from the outputs.
right.
So, but what the format is, I'm less concerned about. I just want to have something that's distinct that I can process in software that from the analyzer that's an output.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, the
yeah,
objective here is to kind of define the content or the requirements for the CPAD, right? From an implementation point of view, it may be something different. Maybe implement differently.
I mean, I think that the choices really are a standalone data structure or a new section definition for a CPER, right? And
Yeah.
if there's enough commonality between the other stuff, like the headers and stuff, then a new section definition of a CPER might make sense. But
Right.
let's get to the point where we know what we want in it, and then we can make that decision, right? That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying too.
Yeah. And I think the only requirement then is that it just has to be distinct. We have to be able to tag it that this is an output. This is the output, not the input. And as long as we do that, then who cares?
Well, I have a lot of gray hair, and a lot of it is because I've been through projects where we tried to overload one thing for another thing, and there's the devil's in the details, and sometimes it gets really difficult to reconcile, like maybe the bit field length of something, or other pieces. So I'm not a big. I've become not a big fan of reusing one thing for something completely different. I think it is confusing. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Anil, I hear your concern that you would like to reuse, things as much as possible, but I think in the end, if it makes more confusion, it's not worth the trouble.
Yeah.
That's just my advice.
Bijan, I agree with you. I mean, that's something that I will I definitely keep in mind, right? I mean, the way I'm thinking about it is if it becomes its own data structure, I think there's going to be enough commonality with CPER. So CPER right now, the first 4 bytes are ASCII that say CPER, right?
Right.
So we could just define it like as part of a CPER, and just the first 4 bytes are ASCII that says CPAD, and then like everything else is the same, and then we have different sections, right? So like
Yeah,
it'll be very similar, right? We just have to figure it out, right?
I think the keyword is reuse, and I think as long as they're closely aligned and yet avoid confusion, so board loading of certain fields and bits, reuse would be possible.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yes, that's a
yeah.
good way to say it. It's like, and that's what I wanted to say was that, overloading is not okay. Reuse is okay.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, your point is very well taken. I mean, we obviously would not like to overload things because we are learning hard way this whole ACPI, right? ACPI is defined for something else, and we overload it with all that stuff, right? So we also learn hard way not to do that.
I'll just say it. Well, avoid overloading. Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, we can work through the details, but I agree with what you all are saying. Okay. Oh, and so then I put the severity and confidence level here. That's why, or not severity, urgency and confidence level. So we need to merge the sections here, and I'll take that action item. I'll just say.
Oh, sorry. These are other fields in the CPAT. Yeah, okay. I
Yeah,
understand what
these
you're
are
saying.
other
Okay.
things people were saying they
Yeah,
want
yeah,
to stick.
yeah. I got it.
And
Okay.
I mean, this mirrors what was above, and obviously we want to be able to drive repair actions and RAS actions with it, right? That shouldn't be too controversial. That's why we're doing it. So, and okay,
Drew, I don't want to do this now. We did talk about this a couple weeks ago. Like repair actions and RAS actions, like the differentiation, I don't think is as obvious as what you're saying, as what you're thinking. I think there's probably a better way to sort of describe, like to express the same thing, but sort of differently. So that's fine. Like I think the basic point is clear. We should just think about how we actually implement, right? How we do that.
yeah. Well, and here's the thing: at the end of the day, we've got to decide whether to send someone out with a screwdriver or whether we can send a command back to the system. And
That's
that
right.
differentiation needs to be stinking clear. So
No,
that's
I get
I'm
it,
hung up
right?
on.
And
I'm hung up on that, but the other stuff, whatever.
no, right. And
So
I
what
and
if,
I
so what
and
if you were
I
to,
think that can be better defined by just having a target field, right? And having a field that's
or
basically
scope,
or
or
scope or
scope?
target or something, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah, because
that clearly says go to this place, right? Kind of
yeah,
thing,
because
right?
if you look, I think the differentiation between repair actions and RAS actions, from just what I think you meant by it, is that the scope is global versus very, like one
Well,
off, one off.
one is physical manipulation of the
Yeah.
system.
Uh-huh. And the
Okay.
other one
Yeah,
is,
but
and the other
Drew,
one's system
yeah.
level, right?
Yeah. But I don't know that that's always like I can imagine in the future, right, where an action is actually targeted at the BMC and not at the actual SOC that had the fault, right? Like the action might be, reboot, put this into the repair pool, reboot, run a test, something, whatever, right? And that could all be automated, but like that's not the SOC that needs to get that information.
Well,
Right?
but I guess okay, but here's a subtlety because this was described later in the doc. I think somebody put a comment about like stop, abort, pause, halt
Oh,
might be
yeah, yeah.
no, I would push back on that, and here's why. I think reset obviously can fix problems sometimes, but but the deal is that these analyzers are going to say take an action, and sometimes the action may require rebooting, but it's really a end user policy depending on like who's using it and their business logic and the goals they want to achieve with their hardware to decide, is this reboot something that I can do right now, or for this particular customer, does it make sense to wait a little while or coordinate it? It will be very much a per machine decision for in some businesses, right? So
And that's fine, right? Again, I'm just saying like, the action might be, run a test, a diagnostic for 30 minutes. I don't know, whatever, right?
okay, I just don't want to sequence. Send this to repairs. If it's but
No,
if
no,
it's
no, 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 no. Yeah, I think repair action and RAS action, like I think we're conflating kind of two different things, right? The intended recipient of the message and the sort of type of action. And like both of those things change when you move from a repair action to a RAS action. I feel like we should try and tease those out a little bit, right?
okay,
All I'm saying is
Let
like I
me
think
let,
there's
let
a
me
better abstraction here, right? That we
let,
can
let me
figure out.
chime in here. So, Drew, this is something you and I talked to, right? I think last meeting we kind of in the last section here we started differentiating RAS action and repair action. But then as you and I were discussing and in some other context, it turns out to be that everything actually fits into the same RAS umbrella. RAS includes automated actions as well as human trigger or human support actions. So I actually redefined in the last section. I'm calling both actually as a RAS actions. The difference
okay.
is,
Now, Neil, you convinced me they were two separate things once upon a time. I used to think they were.
No, I mean
I don't really care.
yeah.
But my requirement stands is that when you need to send a person out or a robot with a screwdriver, we need that just to be like automatably clear. But if as long as we make that match that level of clarity, then who cares?
Well, I
Yeah.
think
So how would we
yeah,
just call it actions and then attach an attribute, right? This is a repair
yeah,
action,
Really, a
RAS
recommendation is
action, or whatever
I mean,
category.
if you look at
could be
the
multiple
RAS, right?
categories.
RAS has a repair included in there. Reliability, availability, serviceability. Serviceability does cover repair, either
yeah.
automated or using humans, right? Both.
No, I think that's why, I think Vilash and I were talking, I think that's why we're saying putting some sort of target or, scope as an attribute, would kind of allow you to not have the distinction like this. Because there are situations where you might need to like reload the whole memory controller instead of just resetting a row of memory, right? So,
Yeah. That is within the scope of the action itself, right?
Yeah, I think the flow drives the action. Really, action is something that came out of the analysis, and then the flow drives the real action, whether it's a soft automated action or a human intervened manual action, right?
And we could say that the human actions are things like, it depends on the action, like, but it could be reseat, could be shuffle or dance or whatever you want to call it, or it could be replace, and those are the screwdriver actions is what I'm
Yeah.
calling.
Yeah.
And I think the main thing though is some of those, well, none of the screwdriver actions, I like that term, can be done by the SOC. So routing the CPAD back to the SOC makes no sense whatsoever, right?
That's right.
So like,
Well,
I think that's a big differentiation. Is
And,
like,
and that was why I was thinking there were two different things. Is one goes to repair automation and one goes to RAS API.
right.
But like I said, I don't care, but my requirement stands.
Yeah,
Screwdriver
right.
actions are down and automated actions are to the left, and we're good.
Yeah, and my point is simply, I think that should be the field somehow, right? Like this is a thing that the SOC can, like this goes back to the SOC or this goes somewhere else, right? Like the target or the scope, right? Like that's an independent field, right? And then the action is just a list of actions, and it could be whatever, right? It doesn't make sense to have the target be the SOC and the action be a repair action, but it's not like whatever, a manual intervention, as Dean said, but it's not explicit. Like the fields are just different, right? That's all.
Yeah.
So they should be interdependent as such, right? Like they has to be associated with the target.
Not
I think we
spec
just
wise,
need
right? Like
something like,
yeah. I'm sorry.
Sorry,
I think when we're writing a spec, we shouldn't make the interdependence part of the spec, right? We just have two separate fields.
yeah, that's
right?
what I agree. Two separate
Yeah.
fields. One is the action, one is the action target.
Okay.
Really, it's the true and then the extent of failure, which could be fixed automated way, or it needs some further thing, and that's mostly debug. Really, what you're talking about, shuffling, swapping the DIMMs around, reseating. That's all debug, really. It's
Well,
not-
I don't call
No,
that.
but it
target
might
is
not
not
be
the
Yogesh.
fru.
Yeah.
Sometimes the target doesn't have to be the fru, right? The fru is the one that had the problem, but the target for the action may be different.
Yeah.
very, very true.
Well, I guess the other thing I would say is that
That's what the debug is for.
Yogesh, I'd like to reserve the term debug for the thing that happens when we have when crash dumps and whatever else don't answer the question, and we have to call you and say, hey, let's do something special. That's like debug is, and maybe we need a special term for that. But
I agree with that, and that's why I'm questioning what.
Okay. Let me give a specific
burden
example.
on the analyzer to define to the extent of what kind of action is needed here. I mean, I think the analysis could tell you what is the troubling or faulty part, what is the nature of the error that it has seen, and based on the data points analysis, what it recommends or thinks has happened. So that could lead to either you go and you took your usual RAS actions, right? You contain the error, you isolate the part, you reduce the capacity, or you go to the point, okay, this is the flu I need to replace, or I need to do something else with this flu. One of the DIMMs, maybe it's the DIMM or maybe it's the slot. I do not know which. So now I'm going to go and send a technician out there. Okay, can you swap the DIMMs and let's see. So that now you're in full-on debug mode.
But
that's
let me
not
give
what
a specific. Hold on,
I
hold on.
think
Let me
for
give a
CPAD to
specific
tell you.
example. No, yeah, but Yogesh, hold on, right? Let's give a specific example that I don't think is actually all that far-fetched. Let's say you have CXL memory attached to a CPU. Okay, the CXL device is fairly smart. It can generate CPERs, so you're getting a stream of CPERs from the CXL device through its like out-of-band connection. Okay, however, in order to do a post-package repair, the system is set up such that the PPRs are driven by the CPU through that in-band mailbox. Like that's how CXL works, or that can be how CXL works. So in that case, the CXL device with its own analyzer needs to then route a CPAD that gets to the CPU that says, please do a PPR of the CXL device, right? So that is an automated action that has to go to a different target than it originated from. Right?
But I don't understand that example because
why?
Well, like if I have a let's say I have a CXL device that is acting as a memory controller, it will be a RAS API endpoint. It will send CPERs, and when I send a CPAD back, I send it to the CXL device. That's the memory controller. It's the thing that's going to write the mode registers to do the.
Go look at the CXL spec. The mailboxes exposed allow the host to do a PPR or allow like a different thing to do a PPR.
Right, but that doesn't mean that that's the way to do it. I think we want it to be a RAS API endpoint.
It could be, but I'm saying, but Drew, like this has to support all kinds of different stuff.
Well,
right?
different example that I'm familiar with is that you have an obvious problem that's happening in the memory that you might think it's a memory controller problem, but really it's being passed down by the OS, and so it requires a very fleet-wide upgrade of OS or whatever like that. So there's an example of where you have a specific error that's pointing to something very specific, but really it's a chain of events that occurred at a higher level or lower level, however you want to look at it.
Yeah. So really just all we're saying is, each field should have a sort of unique definition, right? And not conflate multiple things. And I think if we define it the way Drew, you just wrote it, which is there's a target and an action. And the spec doesn't say that like, hey, it doesn't make sense to specify a manual action and have the target be the SOC, but like that's pretty obvious. Or there's an implementation note that just says, that's not the intent. I think that's fine, right? And by doing that, we allow that's how we will allow the CPAD to live on, because 5 or 10 years from now, something's going to happen that we don't know about right now, right? And so that's a way to keep to make it so that it'll persist, right?
I'm just gonna make this must be able to distinguish, and then I'll say we must be able to distinguish these, manual inventions and automated actions, and I'm confident we can do it. But
what about the case of multiple targets? So say I have a DIM that's gone bad. The action is take that DIM offline. So that's at the system level. But then a message has to go out to a human to say, when you can, replace that DIM and put a new DIM in. So there's actually two targets.
Well, so what would happen? Yeah, that's interesting. That's a really good point, Charlie, because I could imagine one CPAD goes out and it says do the self-repair and then replace as soon as you can, and so we'd have to be able to express that. I don't, or you'd have to send two CPAD, or you'd have to put two actions. You could have multiple actions, and actually that's not that unusual. So when I wrote the SuperDOM 2 analysis engine, one of the things that we decided was that we didn't always know the answer, and so we gave the technician a series of cause action statements to follow while they were out the machine. And so it would be like, pull the DIM out, look at the DIM slot. If the DIM slot's clean, then, maybe dance the DIMs. And then we track it. And if it happened again, we go, hey, you swapped the DIMs. It still followed the slot. It's a bad main board, So I don't know.
My initial reaction would be, let's follow the CPER definition, and a CPER can have multiple sections, right? Each of which expresses sort of a different thing. And so a CPAD can have multiple sections, each of which expresses a different thing, right?
Okay.
I mean, that would be my initial reaction on that.
I'll just say we might have multiple sections with multiple actions, and just as a note.
Yep. And so I
But really, we need just a CPAD. It will confuse.
I'll say it differently, right? Like, again, let's define, if we define the spec that way, it allows for it, right? Do I envision that like first gen implementations will use it? No, of course not, right? But, you know, Charlie's point is a very valid one, right? And
It
if
is.
you generate,
It is.
and if you generate multiple CPADs, like then it starts getting a little hokey, right? But having multiple sections,
Yeah.
you know, allows for some,
I-
you know,
Yeah, and
traceability.
Rama,
Right?
I've done that. I've done it before because I would say, like, if you're replacing a cable, the first action I would say is inspect the cable. You know, there may be an inspect one, and you know, sometimes we found that the cables were pinched, and it was a lot cheaper to replace the cable than it was the thing the cable connected to. So you're like, hey, if you see a pinched cable, which happened pretty frequently, replace that. If it's not the pinched cable, then replace this other board, you know, and that was then we got into the expensive stuff.
And that set of procedures, Drew, kind of proves that you may not be able to have a completely self-contained set of actions in a CPAD. It might be go to this manual and exercise this set of steps.
Well, or you
Which
list
might be
all
good
the
I agree
enough.
with Dean. What we do in the data center technicians, for each fault code or repair action, we give like some steps to it. Hey, pictures of it, like as everybody does that, right? I think the
they
controller
do,
of
but
this
we
is
may
like
want the
RASP.
analyzer. We just may want the analyzer to be able to specify several steps. That's all.
Yeah, this is an interesting discussion. I would think, so the actions at the electronic or the system level can be well defined and put into code. Telling a human what to do, that gives me a lot of heartburn, and that's kind of a troubleshooting document. But that, you know, so this CPAD could point to this humanly readable troubleshooting document of what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And my only point is that sometimes I might be really sure that it's the cable, and sometimes I might not be.
Yeah.
And so I might say, you know, check the cable and do this, or I might say, yeah, just replace this. I already know. So that's all. So and I don't think we're going to be that sophisticated. I agree with Velos is that the initial analyzer is going to be nothing near this. But if we have the multiple sections with multiple actions up front, then we can always add them later if we find that they're valuable.
Agreed. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think at minimum it should say like like you should not use that so often, like otherwise it will confuse, right? Because see, you take one action, replace the like check the cable and try that. That means you move the node to production. Customer may experience a problem, right? Okay. Again, right? We have to see the repeated things. Visual inspections, those are okay, but hey, try this option, see the issue get resolved, try the second option. I don't think you're proposing that way, but that doesn't work.
We're not saying that, Rama, right?
Yeah,
we're just like, none of this none of this specifies the flow or like the type of recommendation,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
It's just specifying the formats, right?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, in the actions, I think we just had, and this is, I think, the point Dean was making too, like, you know, we should just have the field be big enough and say, you know, these are here's a set of vendor-defined actions, right? And the vendor-defined actions might be, go look at section 3 of this manual and, you know, follow instruction flow 1 or whatever, right? And that's not ideal, but like, that's okay, right?
I mean, and then let's just see how it plays out. Because Rama, I mean, when I did this in the analyzer and the SuperDumb 2 analyzer, we listed cause action statements. So we did list the service procedure, and it kind of worked. But so I think, but I agree with starting simple, and we'll just see where it goes. It may be we point to a document that lists all the procedures for that machine, or it may be that sometimes we want to spell it out. We don't know. Let's just see how it plays out.
And CSP policies will also dictate some of those decisions.
Absolutely. Yeah, they absolutely will. And you might even have the same chip on different machines. And on one machine, it might be a cabled connection. On another machine, we might have just have decided, oh, we don't like that cable. We're just going to it's just going to be a trace on a PC board. And so, you know, who knows? You know, but I'm 100% with VLOS. If we have it, we can do it. If we don't have it, it's hard to add later. So, yeah, this is really.
Yeah, I want to chime in here. So, using a simple, breaking down this problem. This is, by the way, this is a complex problem. I mean, in every hyperscaler has a team of people who spend day and night in creating such collaterals and do all kind of millions of machines repair through automation, right? So we are trying to kind of solve. We kind of help in simplifying their job. We are not replacing them, right?
That's
how
right.
can we simplify?
That's right.
How can we simplify, right? So the CPER that we get, right? Decoding that, analyzing it, and what does CPER says? If we can put that in action, it could be. It doesn't have to be complete. It could be as simple as not enough information to take an action. Wait for next CPER or something like that, right?
Well,
so that
can be nothing. Yeah.
right. So I think if we can define some, maybe start with a few simple actions that are very easily consumable by the boots on the ground or consumed by the automation. Let's focus on those first, then go into the more complex, which may require multiple CPERs and maybe time series analysis.
Yeah. I think
things like that.
I think we're aligned there. And the reason this came up, Anil, is that we were talking about, well, what if you say, what if I want to drive a RAS action, like tell this machine to limp? Like let's say I've got a bad high-speed serial lane. I might want to say, hey, let's force this to limp preemptively because we're worried about it. We think this is dangerous. But then we also want to schedule someone out to repair the problem as soon as possible. The CPAD may go two directions. Are those two different actions? They might be. There may be a case where we want to, do something automated and do something, do a manual intervention. So I think we'll just have to figure that out. But at least if we have multiple actions, that would probably be the simplest case: is do something automated and something.
Definitely, there'll be parallel action, possibly parallel action, could be cascade actions, right? Interdependent actions. There's so many vectors we go through, right?
But I agree with everything you said. Let's keep it simple, but we do need to handle that one case.
Yeah, let's define, because see, the thing is, to be honest with you, in hyperscaler world, right? CPER still is a new concept, and there is a sort of fear. Hey, CPER bringing a lot of data, but it's adding now more complexity for me to now decipher that and figure out what to do. Right? If we can address that here, that'll be actually the win for all of us.
Yeah. Well, and I think having a clear output that's easy to parse and easy to take action on is huge. Yeah, I agree with.
And then standardizing at least some of them. I don't think we can standardize everything because it's going to be very hard, right?
Well, and that's one of the reasons we came up with this. Is I was relaying our conversation to Vilas, and Vilas is like, "Why don't we just make a standard output?" I'm like, good idea.
Start with a simple thing. Let's say memory correctable error or memory uncorrectable error, right? Which is going to be standard across every vendor. Well, at least up to some extent, right?
Yeah.
And there's CPER defined for that, right?
The main thing, Anil, right? We need to define the format so it's easily extensible. If we screw up the format, then it's going to be extremely hard, right? So we need to think through the complicated cases as best as we can, such that we know we can tolerate them. But then, like, the initial list of actions in the initial version of the CPAD might be prospective repair, like very simple, right? But it's a whatever 32-bit field, so we can just add stuff later, right?
Yeah. So. I mean, I'm not saying we should not debate, because this is a good debate, right? Good discussions. We are learning, and in fact, I don't mind bringing our own repair guys into this discussion and just walk us through one day in their life. How do they handle all these faults, right? Just learn from data center guys, if that's interesting to this forum here.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of stuff when it comes to taking actions.
Well, and I think the other thing is I've got a million analysis ideas. I've just got so many, like once the analyzers come, I can't wait to start working with people to propose some thoughts. And so, I think we'll just have to have a bunch of conversations on that after we kind of nail the concept down and make sure it's practical. And then I think the first analyzer is going to be way less simple than I want. I think there's some pretty cool stuff we could do in the analyzer. So yeah, let's see where we go.
Hey, Drew, how to interpret the severity field here?
I think it's going to align with other severity descriptions. So there's a field in CPER, and so I would expect it to align with the CPER error severity field. We're not going to invent new severities here.
So, but how does it map to an action? Like,
I think that my thought here is severity in the context of action. Like, is there immediate action, or maybe wait for more?
But then there's urgency as well, right?
Yeah, I guess what I would say though is the severity, if it's a corrected error, and I'm just saying predicting something, there's still something useful to say I had an uncorrected fatal or corrected error, right? And then the confidence level, it may be that like if I do time series analysis and I see a pattern of failures before I see the hard failure, I'm identifying the source of the hard failure with a little more confidence. So I may bump.
What's the use of the field? What's the use of the field? Is it for auditing purposes, or are you going to make a decision at the hardware based on the confidence level?
No, when I've done this in the past, what we've wanted to do is have a confidence field so that we could tune policies for it. So we might say, hey, if we get something with less than 50% confidence, we don't do it initially, or we do some A/B testing and we try it before we do it. But if someone says I'm 90% confidence and they've got some credibility with us, we just do it. So
the confidence interval is consumed by the recipient, and a decision is made whether to apply the CPAD.
Yeah, the policy box, right?
It can be other way. Confidence level can be like, hey, I have all the data to analyze the problem, right? I'm 100% sure, oh, this is the repair action can be, right? Sometimes you may not have all the
But
data
with
required.
CPAD, you are really telling a decision, right? Like you made a decision. If you provide confidence level, how will the endpoint make the decision? Are you?
It's not the endpoint.
Or are you going to?
It's not the endpoint. That's the key. Is it for fleet policy?
Okay.
So if I think you give me a 10% confidence thing and I think it's kind of intrusive, I'm like, yeah, not today, thank you, and I'll just swallow it, and the endpoint never gets it.
So one thing I need to do is to start marking, and I don't think we did the exercise yet, but some of these fields are going to be mandatory, others would be optional, right?
What is the urgency you need? I don't know. Urgency.
I mean,
that is a given anyway, right?
Decision.
Yeah, urgency.
So,
yeah,
Drew, we're talking about kind of two different things here. One is analysis of what the fault is. The other is predicting if that fault is going to grow into something in the future and I need to take action. So there's the analyzing the fault. Do I take from what I know, not trying to predict the future, what I know, can I take action now? Do I have enough information to say that this row needs to be repaired? And now at the second level you're talking about is from the errors I've seen from this DIM, do I think there is an uncorrectable error in the future and I'm going to take proactive action?
Yeah, exactly.
No, but then isn't urgency just different way to say you are 100% confident? Like, I know it is different.
Let me give you an example. Siobhan. I have a bad row in memory, and I've got chip kill ECC. I'm probably not going to crash tomorrow, but I can be 100% sure I've got the bad row. But if I have good chip kill ECC, I should have order months to act. So I might say, I'm 100% sure I got a bad row. I may elect to just go replace the DIM because I hate post-package repair, which is silly. But I can decide that. But in that case, I have a highly confident action that's not necessarily super urgent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but in this case, okay, that makes sense. So if this guides the CSP policy, shouldn't it just stay here rather than like travel with CPAD? Like it should be part of the analyzer or like the policy engine, but probably not part of the
here's
CPAD,
what I
which
would
is telling you to take action. I just want to blindly take action, like
no,
because you asked me to do that, right?
but here's the way I would put it, is that we need an output from the analyzer that is standardized such that software can parse it and act upon it. And the endpoint software is only one component. The fleet policies and repair automations will be owned by the CSP, and they need to parse the CPAD and decide what to do too. So, this was part of the confusion we had with Anil last week. Is the CPAD is absolutely going to the endpoint sometimes, but it's also going to the fleet policies and repair automation. And so it just needs to contain stuff that software that's acting on the output analyzers can act.
Yeah, and Shibata, I mean,
So
don't
then we would
discount the
have to
fact that the
separate it, right?
SOC itself might want to consume that urgency field. For example, let's say that an action comes back in and it is relatively disruptive to system operation. Maybe it has a huge performance impact or something. But the SOC is in a state where it knows, it's in boost mode or something where it knows like something super fast is happening, right? If it's a non-urgent thing, then the SOC can say, all right, I'm just going to wait until, 10 milliseconds until I'm out of this boost mode and then do it, right? So there's other reasons why the SOC might want to consume that information. Again, do I think we would do that in the
Urgency makes
cross-gen?
sense.
No,
I
right?
agree.
So,
Yeah, because there could be something else happening, and you might want to delay. And if this is not really urgent, I can
See you,
reprioritize.
Dean.
So that's
Hey,
that's
guys, we are right at the hour. I just want to make one announcement that next week I would like to take at least half of the time to go over the 1.5 requirement document. I have done some cleanup work. I think there's a few more things need to be done. So if I will ping the other
Oh,
folks
good.
also.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I did not want to cut you off there, Anil. I just wanted to make some progress. So that sounds great.
Absolutely. No, this is good stuff, right? But let's queue up for next week to go over that, and I'll ping offline before that.
And please keep the comments coming in this doc, and we'll have some of the discussion in the comments too. Just to make
I'm gonna have to miss the next 2 weeks. I'm on vacation and both weekends, so we'll see y'all in 3 weeks. But Joel, can you email me a link to this? I keep losing it, and
it's chatted. It's in the chat for this. So if you just go to the chat,
I cannot see the chat for this. Oh, I see. You posted it here today.
In the
Viraj, when are you leaving? Are you available early next week?
Early next week, yeah. But I'm leaving Wednesday and then or Thursday. Thursday I'm out through the following week. So
okay. Did you get the link? I mean, I can
I
email
did.
it to you.
No. I got it. So thanks.
Okay. Hey, thanks for the great discussion. We're getting there. I think I think this is super important. I really appreciate it. If we nail this, it'll be a really big deal. So thanks again.
All right. Thanks all.
Thanks.
Thank
you.
Okay.
Thanks.
See you.
Thank you all. Have a good weekend.